We were sitting in our living room, the dog asleep between us, the TV humming in the background, and I'd asked her honestly, softly, if she even wanted to be with me anymore. That's when she said it, almost smug. "Making you happy isn't my job." And just like that, something inside me cracked. Not shattered, no. That would have meant I still felt something. No, it was more like something had snapped free. A tether, a connection, a belief I'd held for years. After 14 years of marriage, 3 relocations, a miscarriage, and 1 emergency surgery she never thanked me for, I'd built my world around us. And in 5 seconds, she told me I was never even part of hers. It wasn't a fight. There was no shouting. She just said it and returned her attention to her phone, probably texting her girls, the same ones who'd been feeding her garbage advice for months. "Do what makes you happy. You deserve more. Don't settle." Settle. I'd work 12-hour shifts, turn down promotions that required travel because she didn't want to be a solo parent, even though we had no kids. I cooked. I cleaned. I listened when she vented about friends, work, her weight, her unfulfilled potential. I paid for her yoga retreats and never once questioned the $400 salon visits. And still, she told me my happiness wasn't her responsibility. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't even sleep in the guest room. I stayed right there next to her while she scrolled through TikToks with her screen brightness cranked to max. Like I wasn't even real. But inside, I made a quiet decision. I was done trying. Not in the dramatic, pack my bags kind of way. No, I was going to show her what life looked like when I stopped caring. And trust me, I did. The next morning, I made no coffee, no breakfast, no good morning. I shaved, dressed well, and left early. She texted midday, "Are you okay?" I replied, "I'm great." That was it. At work, I started laughing again. I joined the guys for lunch, something I hadn't done in years. I said yes to a weekend fishing trip I would have skipped because she hated being alone. When I got home Sunday night, she was waiting, arms crossed. "Where were you?" "Out," I said simply. She blinked. "You didn't tell me you were going. You never asked." That was the start of it. The unraveling. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't explain myself. I didn't apologize for breathing wrong or for getting almond milk or missing her aunt's birthday. I lived, and she noticed. At first, it was confusion, then suspicion, then hostility. She started snooping through my phone, asking if I was seeing someone. I wasn't. Not yet. But she was about to learn what it really meant when a man stops caring. Because while she was busy pretending I didn't matter, she forgot one thing. People like me don't beg. We build. And when we decide to walk away, we do it silently, strategically, and completely. There were signs. She just didn't see them. Or maybe she didn't care until it was too late. But oh, when the truth hit her, it hit. You won't believe what I found next and who she really was behind that polished wife exterior. But I'll tell you, she used to call me her rock. Not because I was unshakable, but because I was always there. Consistent, predictable, solid. The guy who left the porch light on when she forgot her keys. The guy who picked up her birth control when she was too embarrassed. The guy who covered for her with her mom when she missed family dinners. So I ran a test. I didn't tell her about it. I didn't even plan it on paper. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was curiosity. Really, the kind that burns in your chest when the person you trusted most casually tells you they owe you nothing. I stopped being the rock. I stopped reminding her to take her car in. I stopped managing the bills. I stopped filling the fridge with oat milk and salmon. I didn't touch her laundry. I didn't check in. I didn't initiate conversation unless she did. I answered when spoken to. I smiled politely. I was a roommate, not a husband. And she didn't even notice. Not at first. In fact, the first few days she seemed lighter. Maybe she mistook my silence for obedience. Thought I was sulking, waiting for her approval. She even hummed while getting ready for work one morning, hair wrapped in a towel, her phone buzzing nonstop with group chat messages from people I'd never met. But that smile faded by the 5th day. She called out from the kitchen, "Did you pay the gas bill?" I didn't look up. Nope. A long pause. She tried again. Weren't you supposed to pick up the dry cleaning? I wasn't, I said calmly. But feel free. Her brows furrowed. Are you mad at me? I kept my tone neutral. Nope. She stared. And that's when it began. The slow, creeping realization that something fundamental had changed. She wasn't being punished. She was being treated as she treated me. An equal. And you know what? She hated it. She started staying late at work. Or at least that's what she said. She came home with fast food bags she never used to bring. Took calls in the bathroom. Laughed a little too hard at messages she didn't share. And one night, one quiet, rainy Wednesday, I walked into the hallway just as she was hanging up her phone. She didn't hear me, but I heard her. Don't worry, she whispered. He doesn't care anymore. She smiled, hung up, turned, and froze when she saw me standing there. We didn't speak. She tried to act casual, brushing past me, but she forgot that after 14 years, I know every version of her. And this wasn't the woman I married. This was someone else. Someone who'd already decided I wasn't in the picture. Someone who thought she had the upper hand because I was quiet. Someone who had no idea what I'd been documenting for weeks. Screenshots, notes, digital footprints she left without thinking. Patterns, names, times. This wasn't just a failing marriage anymore. This was an unraveling. And the most dangerous thing you can do is push away the person who knows you best right before they stop pretending they don't see everything. She had no idea I was building something. But she learned soon enough. Our house had never been loud. But the silence now, it wasn't peaceful. It was sharpened, surgical, like every word we didn't say was a scalpel dragging across the surface of something already fragile. She made tea every morning. Now 2 mugs, always 2, but only one got touched. I never asked who the second one was for. I never saw her drink it. Maybe it was for me. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was some quiet little ritual of guilt. But she left it there on the counter between us, like it meant something. The truth was, I didn't need answers anymore. I was watching everything through glass now, like a museum exhibit of a woman I used to love. And she was shifting in real time. I saw it in how she stood when she thought I wasn't looking. Hands on her hips, jaw tight, restless eyes. The kind of posture that comes from waiting to be caught, not waiting to be held. One night, I woke to the sound of her crying in the bathroom. The door was cracked open. She thought I was asleep. She was sitting on the edge of the tub in her robe, holding her phone like it was a detonator. Her face was lit by the screen. Her thumb hovered above a name. Then she swiped it away. That was the moment I knew something deeper than cheating was happening. This wasn't just betrayal. This was guilt trying to morph into justification. She wasn't asking herself, how could I do this? She was telling herself he let her drift, let her disconnect, let her lose interest, let her look elsewhere. And maybe I had. Not because I was weak, but because I'd once trusted her enough to think she'd tell me if she felt lost, that she'd reach for my hand before reaching for someone else's. But now she sat alone in a bathroom lit blue by secrets, weeping for a man who wasn't her husband, or maybe mourning the version of me she never really noticed. That week, I cleaned out the garage. Not out of anger, not for drama, but because I needed space, literal space to think, move, rebuild. I hauled boxes she hadn't opened in years. Found pieces of us I didn't remember storing. An anniversary card with her handwriting still soft from ink. A photo of us on a boat ride in Michigan. A list of baby names we never used. I stared at that list for a long time. And that night, when I walked back inside covered in dust, she looked at me like I was someone new. You're up late, she said, barely masking the nervousness in her voice. I needed air, I replied. And space. Her eyes searched mine. Are you okay? I nodded once, calmly. I'm not trying to be. That's when her voice cracked. Is this about us? Us? She said it like a ghost, like a word that hadn't been used in months. But instead of answering, I picked up my keys and walked out. No suitcase, no plan, just movement. I didn't disappear. I didn't slam the door. I left the porch light on just like I always had. But I didn't leave it for her. I left it for the man I used to be, in case he ever found his way back. And as I drove toward nowhere in particular, I thought about something she once said early in our marriage. Love isn't a feeling, it's a choice. She was right, and now I was finally choosing differently. She just didn't know what that meant yet, but she would. The door to the guest room had been shut for 2 years. We used it for holiday coats, old tech, her half-started side projects. A sewing machine that hadn't been threaded, boxes labeled craft stuff, half a yoga mat. It was the kind of room couples stop thinking about after they grow tired of pretending life is still expanding. But that night, after my long drive, I didn't go to our bedroom. I opened that door, flicked the light, and stepped into a space that still smelled faintly like Christmas candles and forgotten ambition. I moved slowly, not from hesitation, but from intention. Everything I did now had weight. I didn't leave her a note. I didn't announce anything. I simply slept in the guest room. And when she woke the next morning, her confusion hung in the air like perfume. She knocked once. "Why are you in here?" I looked up from my phone. "It's quieter." That was all I said. Her eyes flicked to the half-empty coffee mug beside me, then to the open window. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She closed the door, not gently, and left. But the silence after that moment was different. It wasn't heavy. It was loud. She began to study me not lovingly, but analytically. She started coming home earlier. Her phone stayed face up now. She offered to make dinner. She mentioned a hiking trail we hadn't tried in years. She put effort into conversations, but only just enough to mask what I could feel building behind her eyes. Fear. Because she finally understood that what I'd taken from her wasn't attention. It was my permission. And now she was no longer the focus of my world. She was just a character inside it. And she didn't know the script anymore. By the end of that week, she suggested therapy. I asked her why. She blinked. "So we can fix this." I didn't blink back. I didn't say I wanted to. Her breath caught. Her mouth opened slightly, but she didn't respond. That's when I noticed something. Not in her face, but behind her. The edge of her laptop, left half open on the kitchen island. A blinking screen. A message preview from someone I didn't recognize. A male name. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. Her reaction said enough. She turned quickly, closed the screen. "Work stuff," she said too quickly. I gave her a slow nod. "Right?" She looked away again. "You don't trust me anymore." I smiled without humor. "You told me happiness wasn't your job. Trust isn't mine either." That night, I took photos of everything. Not for court, not for friends. For me. I documented every room, the condition of the house, the timestamp of the unopened mail, the car mileage, the messages I'd sent and received. Not to prepare for war, but because a man who's been emotionally blind for years starts seeing everything once his eyes adjust to darkness. And I was seeing everything, especially her. She didn't know I'd already copied the contents of her old phone months ago when she upgraded. She didn't know I had access to her cloud. I never used it, not out of honor, but because I never wanted to doubt her. But now I was no longer in doubt. I was in discovery. And what I found that night, one name, one photo, one voicemail, changed the tone of everything. Not angry, not broken, just cold. Because there's a very specific moment in a man's life when the woman he loves turns from a person into a past. And I had just reached it. I didn't intend to listen to the old voicemail. It had been sitting there in a forgotten backup from her phone, a byproduct of syncing everything before she traded it in. Most people wouldn't even know how to find it. It was buried 3 levels deep in her cloud history in an app she hadn't used in years. But that's where it was waiting. One recording, one voice, 23 seconds long. I had poured myself a drink. I wasn't angry, not curious either. I was just ready to know, ready to stop guessing. I hit play. At first, it was muffled background music, laughter, something clinking like glasses or bottles. Then her voice came through. Low, close, the kind of whisper you reserve for people who aren't supposed to hear what you're saying. She was giggling. Then she said his name, a name I recognized only from the periphery. A coworker, I think. She'd mentioned him once in passing, said he was too intense to be around for long. Funny how we label people when we're hiding them. And then I heard the line. It wasn't vulgar. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse than that. It was simple. He still thinks I'm just tired all the time. It's almost adorable. She laughed again. The voicemail ended. I didn't flinch. I didn't replay it. I simply set the phone down on the table beside me and stared out the window. Outside, the streetlight blinked. A flicker, a pause, then back again. The rhythm of something broken trying to pretend it still worked. She came home an hour later. I could hear the shift in her step the moment she opened the door. Slower, cautious, like someone walking into a room where the rules had changed, but no one had said anything. She didn't ask where I was. She didn't even call out. She walked through the hallway, glanced toward the guest room, then turned toward the kitchen. I watched her from the reflection in the window. She poured water, stood there holding the glass with both hands like it might keep her from drifting. We said nothing. Over the next few days, she tried to soften. Her voice changed, less sharp, more thoughtful. She asked if I wanted to join her for a walk. I declined. She made dinner and left it on the table without comment. I thanked her but didn't sit. She hovered nearby. I stayed quiet. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't punishment. This was clarity. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't call her names. I didn't storm out. I simply stopped being available. She must have sensed something was wrong, but she couldn't ask because asking would mean opening a door she'd nailed shut months ago. What she didn't know was that I had already started talking. Not to her, but to people who could protect me. I'd met with a financial advisor, updated my passwords, and opened an individual account. I began shifting my name off things, copying documents, setting aside proof. Not for drama, not to go nuclear, but because I knew what was coming. When a person builds a life on the comfort of someone else's silence, they never expect the quiet to turn tactical. The final proof came on a Tuesday, a text notification that popped up on her tablet by accident. She'd left it on the nightstand in the bedroom while she was in the shower. I didn't touch it, didn't unlock it. The message was visible on the lock screen. Just a few words. Still thinking about last time. Same hotel. I didn't need to see more. That evening, we sat down at the same table where she used to tell me about her day. I had made 2 plates, set everything the way she liked it, napkins folded, warm bread wrapped in the cloth she liked. She smiled when she saw it, thought it was a turning point. It was, because after we finished eating, I cleared the table, placed a folded paper beside her plate, and walked to the door. She opened it. Read it. Her voice caught. What is this? I didn't turn around. Just an itinerary. For what? I paused. For what life looks like when I finally stopped protecting someone who didn't protect me. And then I left the house without slamming a single door. What came next? It wasn't a confrontation. It wasn't fireworks. It was something much more dangerous. It was exposure. People assume the collapse of a relationship is loud. Slammed doors, angry words, dramatic exits. But in my case, it was more like an old cathedral roof caving in. Slow, silent, decades of cracks no one cared to fix. You don't hear the first beam fall. You just start noticing sunlight where there shouldn't be any. In the days following our silent dinner and my quiet departure, she didn't contact me. Not directly, no call, no apology. But she posted a photo of our dog, just him on the porch, head tilted toward the street. Her caption, waiting for his best friend to come home. She wasn't messaging me. She was messaging everyone else. I didn't respond. Instead, I checked the logs, the shared accounts, the devices she forgot were still connected to mine. Not out of spite, but because I was past giving her the benefit of the doubt. And what I found wasn't shocking anymore. It was clinical, precise. Every lie left fingerprints. She hadn't just gone to the hotel. She'd booked it under my name, linked it to the same card we used for groceries. The dates matched the 2 weekends she'd claimed to be at wellness retreats. The man she met, not a coworker, at least not currently. His name popped up on a receipt for a dinner she paid for in cash. I only saw it because the receipt had been tucked into her coat when she sent it to the dry cleaner. But here's what made everything shift. I wasn't the only one who noticed. It started when her sister called me. I hadn't spoken to her in months. We were polite at best, mostly orbiting one another during holidays. But she called, and her first words weren't, "How are you?" They were, "I'm sorry." I thought she'd grow out of it. I said nothing. She continued, "She's done this before. Not like this, but she likes control and attention. It's a pattern." I kept quiet because I figured it wasn't my place. "But now," she sighed, "I think she's pushing you out so she can play the victim." That phone call didn't change how I felt. It changed how I moved. The next morning, I visited a lawyer, not to file anything, not yet. I just wanted to understand the architecture of an exit. What I learned was simple: document, wait, protect. That's exactly what I did. Back at the house, she'd started shifting her behavior again. Her tone was softer, her presence more deliberate. She left her phone in plain sight, kept asking what I wanted for dinner, said she'd signed us up for a couple's retreat. I listened, nodded, said little. One night, she brought me tea and sat across from me. "I feel like we both made mistakes," she said. "Maybe we can reset. Clean slate." I looked at her for a long time, not at her face, but at the person underneath it. I studied her like you study something you once loved, now sitting behind glass in a museum. Something beautiful but no longer useful. "What would a clean slate look like for you?" I asked. She blinked. "Honesty, commitment, rebuilding." I nodded once. "Then I guess you need to tell me who Michael is." Her mouth opened, then closed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even change expression. I just let the silence do the work. She tried to recover, said he was someone from a support group, that he was helping her through emotional uncertainty. I let her talk, let her build the lie. She didn't know I'd already spoken to someone who knew Michael and knew where they'd been last weekend. The beauty of truth is that it doesn't shout. It whispers. And when you're still enough, you hear it everywhere. In that moment, I saw what she was really doing. She wasn't trying to save us. She was trying to protect the image of herself she wanted others to believe. And the longer I stayed, the more leverage she thought she'd have. But she didn't realize something else had changed, too. People were watching. Not friends, not family, professionals. I had hired a discreet third-party documentation service. No paparazzi-style drama, no trap setups. Just quiet observation, confirmations, patterns, timelines, legally obtained, carefully stored, emotionally unreactive. Because when the time came, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. I'd simply tell the story exactly as it happened, with evidence, not emotion. And the story, it was about to take a turn that even she didn't see coming, because someone she thought was on her side wasn't. There are moments in life when betrayal doesn't feel like a bomb going off. It feels like a hallway light clicking on at midnight. Sudden, silent, unavoidable. The man she called Michael was someone I had never met in person, but I knew of him. She once described him as unremarkable, someone she worked with briefly on a short-term project. When I pressed for more details weeks ago, she brushed it off. "He's harmless," which is a word people tend to use for things they think you'll never discover. She had underestimated one thing. People talk, and not always to you. One Thursday afternoon, I received an anonymous envelope at the co-working office I'd been renting under my personal LLC. No return address, no message, just a printed sheet with a cropped photo and a single line beneath it. She lied to him, too. The image wasn't scandalous. It wasn't intimate. Just her and Michael sitting at a bar, close, relaxed, leaning in like people do when the conversation is secret. What stood out wasn't the proximity. It was the timestamp in the bottom corner. 7:43 p.m. The same night she said she was with her sister at a grief support circle. I stared at the photo for a while, not because I doubted it, but because it didn't make me feel anything. I didn't feel rage or heartbreak or even betrayal. I felt distance, the kind of distance you can't reverse. Later that night, I parked 2 blocks from the house and waited. She was inside, lights on, music playing. Someone else's playlist, not ours. At 10:21 p.m., I received a text, not from her, but from a number I didn't recognize. "She's lying to you. She's lying to both of us." No name, no follow-up, but the area code matched hers, not ours. That's when it hit me. It wasn't Michael who sent the photo. It wasn't even a man. It was someone else, a woman. And suddenly, every piece slid into place. All the carefully crafted lies, all the perfectly chosen words, all the times she over-explained something that didn't need explaining. She wasn't juggling a single affair. She was managing a narrative, a performance designed for each person in her orbit to believe they were the exception. But someone had gotten tired of being backstage. The next morning, I left before sunrise, went to a quiet breakfast spot I knew she never visited, ordered coffee, sat at the window, and watched people move through their morning. At exactly 7:32, a woman approached the table, no greeting. She sat down slowly like she didn't want to be seen. Late 30s, red coat, tired eyes, familiar. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't apologize. She just said one sentence, "I thought you should know. She told me you were abusive." That's when I realized how deep the manipulation went. She hadn't just cheated on me. She'd rewritten me, painted me into a version of myself that never existed to justify whatever she needed to others to secure attention, comfort, validation, sympathy. I didn't defend myself. I didn't ask this woman questions. I didn't need to. She looked like someone who'd already walked away from something complicated. I believed her, the woman said. Until I didn't. Until I found out she said the same thing about someone else. She slid me another envelope and stood up. "She's going to turn on you the second you stop playing your part." I nodded. "I already have." And just like that, she left. No name, no number, just truth delivered plainly, without drama. Inside the envelope was a printed list of hotels, receipts, partial transcripts from messages. Enough to drown a reputation, enough to start over clean without having to lie about why. But I wasn't after revenge. I was after peace. Which is why what I did next wasn't loud. It wasn't viral. It wasn't designed to ruin her. It was designed to free me. And it worked. Leaving didn't look the way I always imagined it would. There was no suitcase by the door, no goodbye speech, no final stare from the hallway. I didn't even take a photo on my way out. I just left behind the keys, the spare charger, the list of shared passwords, and every version of myself I no longer needed. I moved into a small house at the edge of the water. Not expensive, not dramatic, just quiet. I rented it month to month from a retired couple who grew herbs in the backyard and waved every time I walked outside. There was no TV in the living room, no ring on the nightstand, no need to explain anything to anyone. It was beautiful. I didn't announce the separation. I didn't post cryptic quotes. I let her say whatever she needed to say, let her spin the story, let her search for people who'd validate her version. I was done correcting lies with louder truths. I'd finally understood that peace isn't something you win. It's something you choose, even when the noise around you keeps rising. For weeks, she sent messages. First guilt, then nostalgia, then fury. "You don't get to just walk away without talking this through. You owe me closure. You're being heartless." I read every message and replied to none. Because when someone tells you that your happiness isn't their responsibility, they don't get to demand access once you find it without them. It's been almost 5 months now. In that time, I've done things I forgot I used to enjoy. I go on long walks before sunrise. I cook for myself without wondering if the meal will be criticized. I listen to music she used to roll her eyes at. I laugh in public. I sleep without dreams. I speak without overthinking every word. I even started painting again, something I abandoned in my 20s, back when I first met her, back when I was trying to become the version of myself I thought she wanted. But now, in a small, sunlit room with paint-stained jeans and bare feet, I found colors I didn't know were still inside me. There was no masterpiece, no message, just the quiet rhythm of someone creating for no one but themselves. And that, to me, felt like coming home. A few weeks ago, I met someone. No drama, no butterflies, just a conversation at a bookstore that turned into coffee, then into more conversations. She didn't ask about my past. I didn't overshare. We spoke like people who had both known endings and still chose to begin again. Slowly, gently, on equal ground. Will it last? I don't know. But for once, I'm not rushing toward a definition. I'm just letting things breathe. And maybe that's the biggest lesson I've learned through all of this. That we lose ourselves not in betrayal, but in the performance we keep up to survive it. That silence isn't emptiness, it's space. And when you fill it with the right things, kindness, awareness, freedom, it starts sounding like music again. So if you've ever been told that your happiness isn't someone else's job, take it as a gift. A hard truth, maybe, but a gift all the same. Because once you stop asking someone to carry your peace for you, you realize you are always strong enough to hold it yourself. I'm not angry anymore. I don't want apologies. I don't want closure. I already have it. I found it in the quiet.